Good afternoon. Peter Klein, Chief Investment Officer, co-founder of Align Wealth, with you this afternoon to speak with you about the case for the water sector. As many of you know, I've been an advocate of this sector for more than a decade. Compelling economics, strong companies, a required, commodity, for lack of a better term, and a lot of opportunity going forward. So allow me to share my screen and we will get right to it. Okay, so here we are. The agenda will be discussing the compelling economics of the water sector, the supply and demand function, the opportunities in infrastructure, there's testing and metering. Of course, there are utilities, desalination, investment opportunities. I'm unable to share with you specific names of companies, of course, but by all means, reach out to us, align at alignwealth.com, and we will be certain to share those with you in more detail. And of course, water as an ESG strategy. So let us proceed. This is a graph that shows you how water is probably too inexpensively priced, and because of that there's a lot of waste, and that scarcity of water is failed to reflect in the price, right? So there's a disconnect there, because there is a very scarce amount of water. This shows you the intensity of water, right? How much water is needed to grow potatoes, to grow oranges, to raise chickens or even beef. And then, of course, what's not shown here is technology and industry. But water is needed in so many things, and it touches everything that we do almost. And this is another way of looking at it, where urban sustainability, public health, of course, lifestyle, energy, everything it circles around water. And folks, we don't have enough of it, and we have too much demand for it, and we're losing too much to bad infrastructure. Perfect setup for opportunity for capital markets to find solutions. This is a graph from McKinsey that speaks about the supply of water around the world and how it's drawn from stressed water basins, and you could see how much stress there is in the water sector. So there are challenges, right? We spoke about the scarcity of fresh water equals less than 2.5% of the world's supply. We spoke about the globalization and the growth of the global population, and they all need water. Humans need water, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. 10% of the world's population lack access to water, sad as that is. Climate change and the issues of the environment are affecting water as well. And of course, we spoke about the infrastructure. Some folks say it's $1 trillion in infrastructure over the next 20 years. We've heard as many as $13 trillion globally for the next 40 years. So bottom line, there's going to be a lot of need for a lot, and therefore a lot of opportunity. This is a busy slide, but suffice it to say that it takes you through the water sort of supply chain, if you will. And what comes out of all this are companies in every bit of this chain that are opportunities for investors. 7.4 billion people in 2016, and we're expecting 9.1 by 2050. More people, more demand, still less. We don't have a lot. 3% of all the water is fresh, and only 1% of that is available. So there's a disconnect here, folks, and that disconnect provides what I said earlier, the compelling economics to water. So inelastic demand, a higher price does not limit use. Increase in scarcity, huge barriers to entry. You just don't build a pipeline and build a utility overnight. And history of consistent growth in all conditions. These companies have done very well over the years. So now let's talk about infrastructure. Here are some pictures of some infrastructures. You could see water main breaks and the corrosive in Flint, Michigan. But there's a lot of opportunity in dams and drinking water. And what I mean by opportunities are companies that are fixing the problem. So we're not, we're looking for solutions here, but that's what the companies do, is they fix the problem. And here's a problem, which is water main breaks, 240,000 of them a year. So we have a setup where we have a lot of demand for something that's very scarce, and yet it's leaking. So we got to get it fixed. And this $644 billion EPA estimate, I think, is woefully low. I've seen numbers as much as $13 trillion in the next 40 years globally. So there's a lot of expense and spending that needs to happen. And of course, the political football gets kicked down the street time and time again, because these are long-lasting projects, and nobody wants to make an investment in long-lasting projects, which is a shame, but it has to be done. So we have testing and metering. You have, metering is really interesting, because here you have a lot of leakage, and you have not priced properly, and you get to use technology, to sort of fix that problem a little bit by using these digital meters, as you can see in a moment. And so this is the testing equipment market share, and you can see we have a CAGR of almost 6% per year. A lot of opportunity in Europe. So we like that, and we like the metering, the smart metering, using sensors and the like to help us figure out how much water is being used, and to stop it when there's a leak or something as well. We just had something in our home. We have a system on our home that shuts off when there's too much water rushing through if you're not home, and it could stop a major water problem from happening. CAGR here is again above 6% for the U.S. A lot of opportunity in this market. Here we're seeing again smart metering market globally, and how it's growing. So that's an area of strong interest. We see it again here as well. So metering, testing, that infrastructure is important to look at, and there are plenty of companies that we could speak with you about that play in that game. Desalinization is really interesting as well. It's taking salt out of water, reverse osmosis, and other ways of doing that, often very energy centric. And the key there is how to do it with less energy. So there are companies working on that. Here is a presentation that shows you again what we said earlier about how much water there is. So 3% of all the water is fresh. Got ice caps and glaciers locking down most of it. Got a little bit of it in groundwater, and here's where it comes out. So very little that's accessible. And how do you do desal? And again, think about the companies and all of these different supply chains and all of these different parts of the puzzle that are opportunities, because they're going to be doing more business, because they're going to be doing more desal, because they have more people and more need for water. So it becomes one of these things where it's sort of like a lock, where you're going to have a need and increased demand for these products. And so you got to find the right companies and the right products. But this is the kind of the sort of schematic that I wanted to share with you, that show you all the different nodes throughout that supply chain. And here again, you'll see a number of different companies. And of course, here's the steady growth that you've seen over the last, how many years is this? Probably 10 years. Yeah, 2010, 20. Over the water index, the S&P Global Water Index. It's on 11% a year. Sharp ratio, 8.83, very strong, almost double that of the infrastructure index. So water has its part and has done well. Again, from an ESG perspective, from an environmental, social, governance, sustainable, responsible investing rubric or lens, water clicks many of the boxes. 6 out of the 17 SDGs. Pretty good. So from the perspective of those who are, ESG centric, water can not only do well for your portfolio, but could also do well for your interests in ESG. So thank you for your time and your attention today. Feel free to reach out to us on these matters, and we'll be happy to discuss them in more detail. Peter Klein, Align Wealth. Thank you.